Women Up Radio, designed to facilitate women's empowerment, improve your career, develop your talents, incorporate your passions, achieve fulfillment and success.
Hello, this is Women Up Radio, supporting Empower Women, and today we're talking about entrepreneurial skills. I'm joined in the studio by my co-host Kerry Wheeldon and by our guest Elaine Slatter, who's the founder of Fabulous Fempreneurship and the principal of Excel Consulting Group. So, welcome to the programme, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Can we start, Elaine, will you tell me about your company? What is Fabulous Fempreneurship and what inspired you to create it?
Absolutely. Fabulous Fempreneurship came out of my company, Excel Consulting Group, because when I started that company, I seemed to get quite a few women entrepreneurs approaching me, and I realized that women need more support than guys on their entrepreneurial journey just because they don't have the same business experience. So I founded Fabulous Fempreneurship after I authored a book, which is for women entrepreneurs, and it's a complete startup book. So Fabulous Fempreneurship developed from the book.
Oh, lovely. And how long ago did you start it?
I started it about 1.5 years ago.
Oh, excellent. Oh, wonderful. And I know I've seen on your Facebook group, your Facebook community, it's very, very active. And there are a lot of people every day. There's lots of questions, lots of information. It's excellent. So anyone listening in, what I'll do is on the website later, I'll put a link through so that you can see and have a look and see if you want to join. Anyway, moving on from that, this program, as you know, is all about women's empowerment. And I know you, Elaine, and Kerry and I, we're all very strong supporters of that, and particularly for women who are creating their own businesses. So, Elaine, can you tell me, from your experience, how has entrepreneurship developed over the last 10 to 15 years?
Well, I think entrepreneurship in the last 10 to 15 years, often the barrier to entry before that was the high cost of launching a business. But with the onslaught of apps and software as a service, many women go into that area or put online businesses using Shopify or another service like that, or WooCommerce. And so they can launch businesses at a lot lower cost than they used to be able to do 10 to 15 years ago. And I think that's encouraged women to take the giant leap. And also there are a lot of multi-level marketing companies out there, skincare, healthy foods, cleaning materials, and often women go into that kind of business at the very beginning. Yeah. They get their feet wet in that kind of business, and then they move on from there.
So have you noticed, Elaine, any sort of specific sectors that are particularly strong or especially sort of adapted really for entrepreneurship?
Well, I still see lots of bricks and mortar businesses starting, but the younger women that have the tech skills, the ones that have been in STEM, which is, technology, engineering, math, and science, those young graduates are often starting software as a service business. And so that's where I see a lot of growth, not just women, but men, young graduate males as well.
Oh, right.
Interesting.
It is. So what do you think are the pros and cons of becoming an entrepreneur? I mean, I know this is an enormous subject, but what do you think are the key pros and cons?
Well, the pros, let's go with the pros first. The pros are that you can build and lead your business in any way you want. So you can have a digital business, you can have a bricks and mortar business, you can be traveling all the time and still do business thanks to technology. So you have that absolute freedom to work your business on your own terms. So that's something, fairly new, I think, in the last 10 or 15 years. Because before that, prior to that, probably most businesses were bricks and mortar. And so you had to be, the high cost of entry of that. And the pro now is you don't have that high cost, and you can launch any kind of business in any way that you'd like to do, in any country that you'd like to do it, which is a big difference from 10 or 15 years ago. Now, the cons of becoming an entrepreneur is because I think there are so many people getting into this space at the moment that it is a little bit cluttered. And, businesses come and go at quite a clip. They might come in 1 year and be gone in 2, 3, 4 years. And so there is a bit of churning of entrepreneurship at the moment. The other thing is, I think on the con side, that it could be quite lonely because you're the CEO of your whole business, and you have to be able to do the back office part. You have to be good at sales and a problem solver. And at the beginning, before you get that sales traction, it can be quite difficult. And that's why organizations like my own at Fabulous Fempreneurship and other ones like the Female Entrepreneur Association in the UK or Secret Birds that Joanne Hamilton started in London and the Caribbean, they're all tremendous support groups for women entrepreneurs.
And what's interesting, a lot of entrepreneurs these days are women, aren't they? So, can you sort of think about why it should be that becoming an entrepreneur is now a very big attraction for women, in terms of wanting to create their own businesses?
Well, I think in countries such as the UK, I'll take that as an example, where the childcare arrangements aren't as entrenched as they are in some other countries. Women, once they reach, say, their early 30s, if they're married and they have children, they don't want to go back to the corporate grind, as well as managing a household and children. And they want the flexibility to have a business but still have time for their family life, that work-life balance, if you want to call it that. So I think in North America, at least 38% of businesses are started by women now, and that's up by a considerable percentage. And I think part of the reason, too, in North America is when women graduate from university or college, the career choices are somewhat limiting, only because of the fact that big business in the way we perceived it, say, 15 years ago when I worked in the corporate world, up until 5 years ago, all the large corporations were downsizing, and they're continually downsizing. They can do that partly because they consolidate back office operations, computerization, mobility of workers. There's all kinds of reasons. Technology, robotics, artificial intelligence. They're all different reasons why corporate America or corporate UK or corporate anywhere has downsized their workforce and can do the same amount of business with a lot fewer employees. So the new graduates are finding it tough to get on that career ladder. So many of them are jumping off after a few years, or maybe they can't even get started because they're still at their, part-time gig as a bartender, for example.
Yeah.
So they're choosing entrepreneurship as another means for creating their own income.
And so this is really a question I'd like to ask both of you, because I know both of you have been in corporate before you've become entrepreneurs. So what do you think we need to take into account before we take the plunge? Because it's a big change from being corporate, being in a company, being an employee, to actually taking the plunge and being an entrepreneur. There's a lot to think of.
Well, if I may, I'd like to jump in here. Having come from the corporate world and coached and mentored many women, new entrepreneurs since then, I realized that one of the skills that you really need to have is a good organization skills of knowing corporate structures, how to start your business, the difference between a sole proprietor, partnership, limited company, seeking out the advice if you don't have the skill set yourself, and organizing your back office so that you know bookkeeping and accounting. I think a lot of people get caught up in the passion of what their product or idea is without thinking it through and getting themselves organized to have the financial stability or the acumen to do all facets of the business. And I'm not saying everybody should have every skill, but you should know where you can get that help from, because there are lots of accelerators, incubators, support groups in all areas. And so my recommendation is to seek that out. Seek out a mentor who can help you get started.
Yeah. And Kerry, what do you think? Because you were in corporate headhunting internationally before. Did you find
Yes, I have.
Think of a lot before you changed?
Well, I think my reasons for change were perhaps somewhat different to others. I had a health issue I had to manage, and it was easier for me to manage outside of the corporate world than it was within it. But I think what you do have to be aware of if you are setting up your own business is you have to be very much a self-starter. You have to be able to be sort of apply a lot of discipline yourself to your day. Time management is key. And I think you have to be very realistic about managing your cost base and also understanding how long it may take you to have your first sale, and also then a consistent revenue stream that you can actually plan against. Because I think a lot of people are very unrealistic as to when the money will start to come in, and perhaps downplay what their projected costs are and overemphasize what the revenues are going to be in the short term.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to have a handle on that from day one.
Okay.
I don't know, would you agree with that, Elaine?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Kerry on that one. Yes, absolutely.
And
I think you need to have at least 1 year cash flow to float yourself for the very first year.
Yes.
No, totally agree. And also be realistic about where are you prepared to make perhaps the cuts in your personal lifestyle while you are actually in that first year. Because I think I've been amazed people have come to me from day one. They think, okay, when are we going to order our BMW? When I would say to them, well, okay, does your revenue stream support that yet? Well, no. But I've always driven BMWs. Well, maybe you're not going to be driving a BMW right now. What are you prepared to sacrifice in those early days?
do you think we need a particular mindset to be an entrepreneur? Because I'm a great admirer of Richard Branson, but I'm the first to admit that not everybody has his verve and adventurous spirit. So what do you think, Elaine?
Yes, I think you do need a particular mindset to be an entrepreneur. You need to be a risk taker, because entrepreneurship is risky in that you just don't know, as Carrie mentioned, that what's going to happen in that very first year. So you have to take that risk and plan and then pivot, meaning adjust if things aren't working out quite the way you thought it was going to be at the beginning. And you have to be a very good problem solver, and you have to be adaptable, organized, and you need a lot of grit. A lot of grit, as Angela Duckworth in the US has studied, that grit and perseverance is more important than anything else, because it's a very wavy curve in entrepreneurship. You have your ups and you have your downs, and you have to push through the downs on your way up to the highs.
And Elaine, how do you think women can sort of best develop and also expand their entrepreneurial skills? What for you is key in this respect?
Well, funnily enough, last week I was at a leadership series at our local university, and the speaker was the vice president of Twitter, and she had many different roles in our country, running one of the English services for the CBC television, which is like your BBC. And she said it's very important for women, when they want to expand their entrepreneurial skills or any skills, is to find a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor. Now, those could be 3 different people. They don't have to be women, but you need all stages. You need a coach to help you, coach you with the skills that you don't have. You need a mentor who's going to give you the experience that they've had in their corporate life or their entrepreneurial life, and help you, what they have done, if they have approached a problem that you might have. And you need a sponsor, somebody that thinks that what your product or idea is great, and opens up their network to say, hey, give this person a try, or, I like what I see. Can you suggest somebody else who could open up more doors? And so if you have those three key people on your side, I think you can develop your entrepreneurial skills.
And do you think entrepreneurial skills are restricted just to setting up a business? Or do you think the development of these skills is also applicable when you're working as an employee in corporate? I mean, is that an advantage, being more entrepreneurial?
Yes, absolutely. Because when you're doing in the corporate environment, you do definitely need those same skill sets, because in today's environment, if you want to expand your corporate career, you need to be a really good leader, and a leader would be able to have all those skills: problem solving, organized, adaptable, taking risk, have the perseverance. I certainly remember taking on large projects in the corporate world, things that we had never done before. And so I found that I needed to have all those skills in order to lead teams through big change.
Yeah. Okay. And are there any other fields where entrepreneurial skills can be used outside of business?
I think the entrepreneurial skills are a life skill. I don't know if you agree, Carrie, but it's absolutely a life skill.
I think absolutely. Because I think if you've got the entrepreneurial skills, you tend to be sort of a self-starter in many areas of your life.
Yeah. Okay, so are there any examples of women that you can give us who've really developed their entrepreneurial skills and how they've used them so that they've got more fulfillment and success?
Well, I can think of n number of women that I've come across that have done that. In the UK, for example, if you take Carrie Green, the founder of the Female Entrepreneurship Association, she started out as a lawyer. And then she was in mobile services, that kind of area. And then she started the Female Entrepreneurship Association and has blossomed since then. And she actually got an award from Buckingham Palace for entrepreneurship.
Really? I didn't hear that.
Yes. And then if you take Lauren Conrad, she may not be familiar to European listeners, but she's an American girl who was on a very popular TV show called The Hills. Mm-hmm. And while she was an actress on that TV show, she went to the Fashion Institute, and now she has her own clothing line. So she completely changed direction.
Oh, wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And then I can, here in Canada, Heather Gamble, who was an IBM executive and a Xerox executive. She's started her own entrepreneur adventure called Women on the Move, and that's a female incubator, the first one in Toronto. Anne Day, who's founded a company of women in Canada. Mm-hmm. She started out as a book editor and a magazine editor, and then worked for the Ontario government, and now is the founder of a company of women, which is an online and also a bricks and mortar, in that they have actual meetings and conferences and that kind of thing. And then if you go across to India, you've got Dr. Harbeen Arora, yes, who was educated in India, in the UK, and took a doctorate in Paris, co-founded a university, and then started the Women's Economic Forum. And along the way, she found the time to write 3 books. Yeah. And one of them is like Creative Living. So, all these women that I've talked about here are definitely self-starters, yeah, and have crisscrossed in different areas. And Joanne Hamilton's another example, yeah, trained as engineer.
She was in property, wasn't she?
Yes, in property and construction. Yeah. And now she's founded Secret Birds both in the UK and in the Caribbean, and is going to bring that forward and expand that in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Both online and, feet on the ground.
Yeah. And so, she's actually, because the Women's Economic Forum, so Harvey and Aurora's Women's Economic Forum, they're having a big forum in New Delhi in May, and I know Joanne's one of the speakers there.
Yes, that's exactly right, and I'm hoping to get there one day too, because and I hope, Carrie, you are too, and Anna as well, because all these women, I think we're all paying it forward, in one way or another, to move the bar forward for women entrepreneurs or women in general. To say, hey, look, we've been there, we've done that, we know it's not easy, but we're here to help you.
Yeah. Well, in fact,
absolutely, yeah.
And Kerry and I have been talking about doing a course, particularly to help women that want to start up companies. Kerry had the idea for it, and I think it's great because there's a lot of people that really don't know the basics about it. So it's nice to have step-by-step help, and I think that can lead on to a lot. And the things like Women's Economic Forum and the All Ladies League and some of the other events that they have around women and entrepreneurship, they're so helpful, and people seem to be so generous, really supportive. I'm surprised at just how kind and supportive the community is, because I'm used to business which is pretty cutthroat, and it seems to be a completely different mentality with women entrepreneurs, which is lovely. It's very, very nice to be part of it.
Well, yes, I totally agree, and we're doing exactly the same thing here. Mm-hmm. As we speak, I'm taking part of the book at the very beginning, talking about the business model canvas, and doing a course on that, both for Company of Women and Women on the Move. Because the business model canvas is the very first start from when you have an idea to see, map it out all on a piece of paper with Post-it notes and see how it goes with the 9 buckets. And then if you kind of think about that for a little bit, and then you can move forward from there, to the lean startup model, and then from there to the business plan. And maybe your entrepreneurship idea can be a side gig for a bit while you're still working, and there's no reason why you can't work on it at the same time. Yeah. So these kinds of courses are just the foundation to help women who don't have previous experience, because it's not to say because you've got business experience that's the magic bullet. You might have this fantastic idea because you're very creative, but perhaps you don't have those foundational business skills. But if we can provide those, it's not rocket science. If we put it in a language, everyday language, and that's what I'm trying to do, is teach it from the base level. This isn't university teaching. It's taking the ideas and moving them back down so it's in common language that people understand.
Yeah, it's so much more practical. Right?
Mm-hmm, practical. That's a great way of putting it.
You are listening to Anna Letitia Cook and Kerry Wheeldon at Women Up Radio.
I think we sort of touched on it there, where obviously women in business seem to be very much more supportive of each other. I mean, obviously that's one sort of very positive trait. I mean, Elaine, I know lots also that people talk a lot about women's strengths in business and their skills in business being very different to those of men. Do you think it's true, or or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think they do have common traits with men, but they have a lot of skills that are actually better skills than men have in some ways, and men are learning from women. For example, I think that women are better at building teams, leading teams, because they have more empathy. They're used to multitasking, so therefore they don't see questions from their teams as being annoying. They're more open to discussion. I think it's because they're more collaborative by nature than competitive. And I think males tend to be a little bit more competitive in the workforce and less collaborative. But I definitely think that's changing.
Mm. And so what would you list as women's main strengths in business?
I think they're great listeners. And if you are a great listener, then you get a better appreciation of what the problems are because you're listening to all different sides.
Yeah.
And we tend to listen first and speak second, whereas a guy might do it the opposite, speak first and listen second. Or he might be a little bit tone deaf to what his team is saying.
Yeah.
So that old school way of leading my way or the highway, I think, has definitely gone out of the window. And the more collaborative and, soft skill set that women seem to have a little bit more of than the guys. And I want to say this in all honesty, I worked in a male environment for 30 years. For most of my work life, I was working in the most male-dominated industry you could ever imagine. It was the welding industry. And yet, in our organization, especially in the Canadian operation, many of the department heads were women. And we had a CEO at the time who recognized that women had a lot of traits that his guys didn't have, and therefore put them in those positions, the head of our IT and accounting and customer service. I was head of marketing at one point and then head of customer service at another point, international customer service, all those touch points that need the human interaction and problem solving skills were given to the women managers, and the male managers were on the technical side, the product development, the sales, and that kind of side.
I'm going to sort of add there. I mean, it's interesting because I started my career in Canada as well. And in fact, I was also in a male-dominated industry. And I mentioned, I think, in a previous interview that we did an assessment for diversity and equality, and we failed, although we didn't have to pass and fail, but we actually wouldn't have actually passed had there been an official test because we had too many women in senior management. So I'm wondering if that was sort of perhaps Canada and Canadian, business leaders are more forward thinking in recognising the abilities of women before perhaps, say, for instance, people here in the UK would have done. When I came back to the UK, it was like, how could you have reached that position when you were a woman? Yeah. It was a very different sort of take on where the skills I had were going to fit in.
Yes, I think I would have to agree. I was born in the UK, but left at a very young age, mainly because of that whole thing that you mentioned, that in the UK, business was considered the man's world and not particularly the woman's skill set. And if I wanted to have a career, I knew it wasn't going to be in the UK. So I'm a little bit surprised that it's still that way. Canada, I think, is very forward-thinking in diversity. The large corporations, for example, my son works for the TD Group, which I believe is also in the UK, not so much on the banking side, but in the financial stockbroking side. And they definitely have a diversity plan in that they want to bring on even more women at the higher ranks. When I say higher ranks, I mean the vice president level, associate vice president, vice president, senior executive vice president, that level. Mm-hmm. They're trying to raise the bar in that sense.
Going back to women's strengths, do you think that they differ depending on our upbringing? Because a lot said these days about predeterminations and beliefs which are required from those around us, whether it's our family, our parents, our teachers, whatever. Do you think that has an effect, or do you think that's basically irrelevant?
Well, I think less of an extent today than it was, say, 20 years ago. I mean, for sure, 30 years ago when I started in business, one of the reasons after I got married and had 2 children is I have a daughter and a son. And I thought that if I created a career path for myself, it would make it easier for my daughter in her generation to have the same path. And I hope that was my writing concern right from the very beginning. It wasn't so much about the money or the trajectory to the top. It was to pave the way so that my daughter could find it easier. Yeah. And I think that her generation, my daughter's generation, and the generation perhaps a little bit behind it, the grads, they're certainly finding the doors are opening a little bit better, and it's more on what you can achieve for an organization than whether you're a male or a female. And having said that, I think women have to learn to maybe, and this might sound funny to you ladies, but I think women have to find adaptability into the male-dominated business world. It's, you have to weave and bob around, find your sponsor, find your mentor. That's what I did, and that's how I found that I could move up in the organization, because somebody else was always speaking on my behalf for the next job category. Yeah. And if you try to do it all on your own, or just have the women's club versus the guys' club, that doesn't work. You have to cross-pollinate yourself with the guys in the workforce as well as the women. And you have to learn your skills, I think, your leadership skills and your business skills from whoever is best at it in your own corporation. Sometimes it might be a woman that you take your lead from. Sometimes it might be a guy. It doesn't really matter. If they have skills that you want, then they're the person you lock onto and ask them, outright ask them if they'll be your mentor. Yeah. Most people are more than happy to do that.
Yeah. And once you're sort of in a role, do you think there's sort of peer pressure at work, within the different industries that we end up working in, that would then sort of shape the strengths and how you're able to actually develop those strengths?
I think that business culture is much more open today. And so if you want to lead in an organization, it's up to you to go get that skill set, either within your corporation, outside your corporation. This breakfast that I attended at the business school at the local university last week, it was at 7:30 a.m. and it was a women's leadership series. There were some men there, but mostly women. There were over 230 people that got up and were at that location at 7:30, whether they had kids, whether they had a long commute to get there, they were there at 7:30. So that just shows me that women are definitely interested in improving their leadership skills and will learn from anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so how do you think we can expand on our strengths and use them best as women?
I think we have to open up our minds very much to see what's out there, that the world is a big place, and just lift your head up and look up and see what do you really want to do next, and then you have to go after it. You have to get the skills to do it, and you can learn along the way, embrace the fear, and just go for it. I think women sometimes in the past, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago, had a fear of being right out there and going out on a limb. And I think we have to learn to embrace that fear and find our own tribe, and the tribe will help push you through to the level that you want to get. That tribe could be a mix of men and women. It could be women only. It could be old people. It could be young people. It doesn't really matter, but you find your own tribe.
Yeah. And are there ways that you think, or that you would recommend, that women should look at for actually investing in ourselves, really? I show myself some great examples, all the women you meet through the Fabulous entrepreneurship initiative?
Well, I encourage women every Monday on to join our mentorship program. It's only 6 half-hour sessions. It doesn't seem like a lot, but you can choose your own mentor depending on the skills that you need. And those women will take on other women to just guide them. I'm a mentor for a lot of programs at the local university incubator, for the Company of Women, for Futurepreneur for the under 40s. And I've mentored women, I've mentored men. And it's that open relationship with somebody that you can trust, that you say, hey, this is my problem. Is it something you could help me with? Or could you recommend somebody? Or what courses should I take? Or, you know, what technology should I invest in? And those kinds of things. And I can't say enough about finding somebody to help you along the way.
Do you have any last tips that you can give us? Any ways, any actionable tips or strategies that you can give to our listeners?
Well, if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, I would look out for books that can help you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's a whole raft of books on Amazon. I'm reading one right now at the moment, actually, or just starting one, and it's The 4-Hour Work Week with Timothy Ferriss.
Yeah.
There's so many books out there. Richard Branson book, just male authors, female authors, because you get different ideas from them. Start reading a few books and